Welcome to the Cult Bar, folks. I am Doug, your not so fearless leader who is battling the throes of COVID here. So, yeah, doing it anyway.
Brave and like more dedicated than the post office.
Okay. I didn't have to leave my house, so this is hardly dedication.
I don't know. I have my own issues with our local post office. Maybe I shouldn't talk.
Yeah. Okay, so you want to lead us off with our warnings, as we always need to do at the beginning.
Yes. So as usual, spiritual abuse is always going to be a trigger warning on this show because that's kind of what a cult is. And in this one, we're going to have mention of child sexual abuse, child non-sexual abuse, narcissistic abuse, suicidal ideation, and high control romantic relationships, as well as high control cult organization relationships. And I think we've covered them all. There's quite a bit in this one.
Yeah, kind of. So yeah, that's going to be something just to be, this is too hard for you. We don't take offense. Please don't watch. We don't want to make anything harder for you. So yeah, that's our little gist. So how about we kick it off like we normally do with some news?
All right, let's do the news.
Let's do news.
So because this month's cult is really intense, I thought we'd share something kind of fun. As you know, we watched season 1 and 2 of The Vow for our first couple episodes. And then on our last episode, which was a fun one, our source was Cult Podcast with Armando Torres and Paige Wesley. And on Tubi, as of this week, I believe, there is a new NXIVM documentary called Branded and Brainwashed inside NXIVM, and Paige and Armando are two of the talking heads on it.
Oh, nice.
It's not funny.
No, we're not saying haha. Yeah.
Their podcast is funny. This is not funny, but I thought it was fun because it's kind of an update on one of our cults and an update on one of our sources. So, and it's free to watch. So what do you got to lose? I figured I'd share it with everyone because if you're watching this on our now 4th
Volume 4.
Yeah,
Volume
you must
4.
actually care a little bit about cults. So there you have it.
Hey, side note about Tubi too. They announced this week, I believe, that they are going to be taking all the shows that have been taken off of HBO and I believe another platform and streaming them free there. So things like Westworld, which is no longer there, that will be streamed on Tubi for free.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So
you're not sponsored by Tubi, by the way.
No, we're not. I just thought that was a cool little aside. Yeah. So yeah.
So what are you drinking?
Yeah. What I mean, free. How can you go wrong with that price, eh? You know?
Right.
But yeah, that I'll definitely have to check that out. I haven't seen it. And the host of the podcast that you mentioned, Armando, and unfortunately I forgot her name. They are fantastic on that podcast. They're very funny. They have a way of making things humorous about very serious cult shit, and they're excellent at what they do. So check their podcast out as well. So this week, you and I are going to be talking about the wellness guru Teal Swan, which is quite a name. As we later find out, Swan is not part of her name. Teal is her middle name. But so basically, we went off the docuseries The Deep End, which chronicles in 4 episodes of what Teal Swan and her group are about. So basically, she styles herself as a person who can help fix old trauma and not licensed.
Really, all you need to do is convince people you're a psychic, and boom, you can heal trauma.
Yep. So that's what she does. She does all these videos. She got popular on YouTube. She went that route and then eventually was able to start charging people for things, and then does these retreats that are about $5,000 a pop. And it's a lot. It's a lot. And she is the captain of the ship and will suffer no other leaders. So that's where we get into the narcissistic bit.
Yeah, there's some really interesting conversations about her leadership that come up in this documentary.
And so before we get into all this, drinks. What do you
Yes.
have?
So I have a teal squeal, but as we noticed in the pre-show, my lighting is making it look neon green. I promise that it's not. It is teal. It's Tito's vodka, blue curacao, and crushed pineapple.
Mm,
It's
sounds really
okay.
good.
It's really strong, so it's just okay.
Yeah, well then, easy. We got time.
No.
Being that I am in the middle of trying to kick COVID, I'm actually doing a tea. And I thought, in keeping with the theme of the wellness stuff, asked my wife, what kind of tea should I do? So she gave me something called Sage Woman. So it's like something you put in like one of the little containers and steep it in the water. It's not in a bag. It's loose tea. I don't do tea like that very often. So yeah, she gave me that. So I'm just going to be sipping on that.
I went through a loose tea moment a few years ago and I had like every kind of those steepers that you could think of. Like one looked like a swan, as a matter of fact.
Mm-hmm.
It looked like a cactus. Like I went crazy with it. And now when we moved, I lost all of them and I have a bunch of loose tea that I need to throw out because it's old.
Boo that, man. Boo. Yeah. I mean, my wife did do one that she had that actually smelled and tasted a bit like smelled especially a bit like scotch. It was very peaty. So that was very good. But I don't think we have any of that anymore. But anyway, keeping in theme with, this is the thing. We're going to be going into wellness culture. And wellness culture is
Dangerous.
dangerous because style themselves as experts and don't have any schooling to back that up. So you run into a lot of things that are, considered quackery or it inspires a lot of cults and cult-like leaders. The cult-like leaders, where you see quite a few of these in this sort of thing. So I don't know, where do you want to start off with this? Because as you and I discussed, this is not a cult where there's some big things, but it's not like gigantic things like Nexium or things like that. It's like a bunch of little things that cumulatively make it big.
I think maybe the more accurate way of viewing it is like she's huge as a persona, but her cult is actually very small. So like,
yeah, fair.
We're getting kind of a front row seat to the beginning of something. Assuming it continues on and like as we get through the discussion, I think it's pretty obvious she's going to do everything she can to continue it. So yeah, I would say, well, to talk about what you were saying about the wellness industry, I think part of it is because it's not regulated at all. There's nothing, and there are jobs like what she's doing that you could say, I'm a coach, I'm a spiritual coach, and there's no regulation on that. And maybe some people who do it are really good at it, but in her case, and I would say probably in many cases, she knows just enough to be really dangerous. That was kind of my takeaway from all of the actual work she does with people. Is like, well, that's kind of a thing when you're working with people with trauma, but you don't do it like that.
Yeah, and we're going to talk a bit about the trauma shit later because, yeah. So where would you like to take off? I mean, we have lots of options.
I guess we'll just start with the fact that we'll just say like her whole system is called the completion process, which, given all the allusions to suicide, I really hate it being called that, but that's a different topic. She claims that she had all of this horrific abuse in her childhood, sexual and otherwise, and she saw a psychiatrist. Also, that because she was psychic, she wasn't understood and they thought she was crazy. So she saw a psychiatrist, she saw a psychologist, nothing worked, and then she figured out how to do it on her own. And now all she is doing is taking this thing that she learned to do for herself and taking it to other people to heal them.
To end suffering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she likes to imagine this being something that is going to like overthrow psychology and psychiatry that is going, like, everyone in the world is going to do this someday. And I think if you know anything about healing trauma, one, no one thing works for everybody, no matter how good it is. And two, don't do it with somebody who hasn't had extensive training in dealing with people who have big trauma, which we see in the show. It's just dangerous. Like, I don't even know how to get into it because there's stuff she's doing that I am actually surprised that the accusation is that 3 people killed themselves because of her videos, and not that we're seeing people killing themselves after leaving those retreats, because they're really not handling people's trauma. And she can't stop, like, to her inner circle, if someone's doing something she doesn't like, she's, for lack of a better term, she's a total bitch.
Mm-hmm.
And you see that come out with the clients in, like, if it's not working for them, it's not because it doesn't work for everybody. It's not because it's a bad program. It's not anything. It is, you're bringing negative energy in. You suck. Like, what is wrong with you? And she's taking that same authoritarian, mean approach with actual clients who are there dealing with extreme trauma. And so that is terrifying to me. Like, just, you could pay $5,000 to have everything you're trying to deal with compounded.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you see the authoritarian thing even in the very first episode when that one guy asks her if she's accountable to anything, and she's like, "Why should I be accountable to anybody?"
Yeah,
and she would, like, furious that that guy said that to her, and like she has this way of doing this stare and just trying to unnerve people. Like, I mean, I don't know if you saw that was like a tool in her toolbox, is to, if someone confronts her, she won't break eye contact and just be like, "What are you doing? Like,
did you notice
how dare you question me?"
that whenever she thinks someone is criticizing her, sometimes even when they're not,
Yeah.
she jumps to projecting onto them the things that come up in the wider conversation about her. So it wasn't, how I did this myself and it worked, so I'm bringing it to you. No one taught me how to do it because I had to teach myself. It is, why do you think I'm dangerous just because I don't have a mentor? And the guy didn't say that. But also, like, way to give it away, honey, because that is what makes you dangerous. You don't have anyone to call you on your bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
And
Or if you fuck up, nobody to hold you accountable for it, you know?
right.
Yeah. So that's a good starting point.
Yeah.
Starting with an authoritarian who doesn't understand how dangerous they are. You know, it's.
I think she does. I think that's why it comes up so often.
I just wonder if the narcissism is so high that she kind of, maybe not unaware, but kind of just, well, they're just not strong enough. Like, maybe she's convinced herself of her own story.
I think that's partially true, but here's my hot take going into the episode. Okay.
All right, hot take starts. Let's go.
I think no, because I think this isn't true, Keith Raniere, but most cult leaders, most people who get into this, like, wellness grift, start out believing what they're selling. But there's a lot of moments in that documentary where she is talking about the business and her career and her influence in a way that makes me feel like it's not really about the work anymore. It's about what the fame and the money and the control. And I think why it always comes out like, you think I'm dangerous, you think I'm out of control, is because she is aware. It's almost like, if I know, Doug, that you're mad at me because, like, let's pretend that we're a multi-million-dollar company. You know, I've been right. It's fun. Let's just do it. But you know that I've been taking money out of, like, the petty account to do, like, go get my nails done or whatever. And you haven't said anything yet. But I don't know that you know. And every time we have a budget meeting or every time you have a suggestion, I'm like, What? You think that we're going over budget? You think that I'm not responsible with money? Like, I think that that's kind of what is coming out, that she knows that she is fulfilling, like, the checklist of the cult leader.
And
And
projection.
because she lies. Also, there's a whole thing in what episode 2 and 3 with the private investigator. She lies to the private investigator because she knows if she tells the truth, the private investigator will write up a report saying that they are a cult. So if she fully just bought it and believed it, she wouldn't lie. She'd tell the truth, right?
Yeah. The private investigator is a one of the funnier bits of this entire thing, if there's anything funny. So it's going to be great to get into her a little bit later.
Tune in for that because she's fun.
She's fun. She's fun. In a lot of weird ways, and that's what makes it so great. But yeah, I mean, it's hard because she finds people who are very vulnerable and wanting the pain to stop, whatever the pain may be for them. And she tells them, I can fix this. And she does these videos, which the videos look like they were made in the freaking 80s. And she made these in the 2000s. So I'm not sure I know Blake was the one who edited it all.
I mean, it's like if I went into my settings and put up like a fake background and then I moved around and you'd see all the, it's like that. Yeah.
It's really bad. And somehow, people are like, oh yeah. And I'm like, okay.
She uses that same technique that Nancy from Nexium uses. It's the tone of voice and obviously on the video, she's not making eye contact with people, but it's that I'm talking about something very emotional and serious, but I'm doing it so calmly and so monotone that there's no reason in the world that you would get upset. And isn't this soothing? And then she tells you to imagine killing yourself. So,
yeah. And that was, this is the biggest controversy is, the 3 people who apparently unalived themselves, and the people out in their life proclaimed that it was because Teal Swan told them to. Now, Teal Swan says, envision both ends of it, which we both know that is not how you do therapy for people with suicidal ideation. You do not persuade them to think about the actual end.
The thing, well, one, and they make this point in the documentary, it's 3 people that we know of. Because not everybody is talking about what they watch on YouTube right before they kill themselves, and it is also one of those things where maybe somebody watched it and did that visualization exercise, because she actually encourages people to think about how they would do it, which again, that's the big, don't do that. That's the worst thing you could do. Maybe they watched it and a month later, that's when they hit their moment that, where people who struggle with suicidal ideation, suicidal thoughts, it can turn on a dime, and for reasons that people who aren't suicidal would never understand, but they had that visualization, they had that plan already in the back of their mind. So it's very the last thing you would do if you actually wanted to convince someone not to do it. But in that first section, we see her talk about it in a way that's like, what's the big deal?
Well, she also proclaims that if you end your life, it is a quote unquote reset, because she believes in reincarnation. So to her, it's like, well, what's the harm? And I'm like, yeah, but you don't know, and nobody knows. But
and that's also not how reincarnation works, right? It's not like, if you believe in it, it's not like a video game.
Yeah, it's not like hey,
beginning and you still know everything. It's a very weird. Lots of cultures believe in reincarnation and don't think it's fine to just kill yourself.
Nope. That is actually most cultures don't think that's a good thing. So, yeah. So, if we could, I'd like to shift the conversation to just something it's actually more of a high level cult thing that you and I have talked about, is the idea of one of the hallmarks of cult behavior is isolation and making sure you're isolating people. And there's 2 parts to this, in that the isolation doesn't occur on the quote unquote outer circle, the people that are coming to the retreats, not necessarily.
It sort of does, but we'll get there.
Yeah, it sort of does, but I mean, not to the level of the people who are quote unquote in the inner circle. The inner circle, there's a whole fuck ton of isolation going on there. The only thing that I saw, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe you saw something I didn't, was the idea that when she talks to these people who are at her retreats, she says, this could really upend your life. This could mean you lose family members. You might decide you don't want to be married anymore. And just like she's preparing them to kind of be ready for things to get cut off in their life. Like these are support systems they have. And she's saying prepare for those support systems to sever.
Also, I think it's important to note that because of how she markets herself, she is almost solely working with people who are struggling with suicidal ideation and who are extremely mentally unwell due to whatever might be going on. We don't really know. Like she's not, I would doubt she's keeping any kind of records, right, of what these people are actually dealing with. So you plant the seed that maybe all these people are actually bad for you, and then she goes into this, what would you even call these sessions she does? It's so weird. But she will make suggestions that the people in the clients' lives are like basically the most terrible evil you can imagine. We'll get into that more. But the point being is like people who are in those kind of states already isolate.
Mm-hmm.
They already doubt their relationships. Sometimes it is, I think everyone would be better off without me. But sometimes, depending on what the issue is, maybe I just can't handle being around people. Maybe people are the problem. And so having this really almost volatile situation and then suggesting maybe you'll abandon everybody in your life and then making these weird claims about how dangerous these people are, it's really weird. And that's part of the reason I say it's surprising that people don't leave and kill themselves.
Yeah, and like I said, those are the three that we know of, but there could be more. I mean, we don't know, but it's pretty shocking to watch how she kind of just immediately sets the precedent that this may cause this. So she's basically saying, be prepared in case this stuff happens. I mean, the real isolation to me is the inner circle stuff. We find out later in the episodes, I think episode 3. So long story short, all these quote unquote accusations are coming at Teal Swan, and her manager Matthias, who we're going to talk about later because another funny guy, decides that it'd be a really good idea to have a PI research them to make sure that they're not a cult, so then they can publish this finding like, see, we're not a cult.
There's not a lot funny about this cult except for how absolutely oblivious these people are.
Yes.
They actually paid money to have an unbiased third party investigate them, because certainly once we do that, everything will be fine.
And worse,
and invite the documentary crew in.
Yeah, and then worse, Matthias gives her this document that is called the non-negotiables list for the inner circle. He just gave it to her, and it's all this shit that is, and she's going through the list, and it's like, yes, and like, is this cult? Yes, yeah, and all of them are just cult. Like the idea of just, I don't know, nothing comes before Teal. Everything is about Teal. Your lives, you know, you could have partners, but they have to be able to meet these criteria. But
there's no leisure travel, because
there's no leisure travel. You're only traveling if it's affiliated with the company. Like, it is just.
Oh. I believe she says everybody there is on 24/7. Mm-hmm. If they're not actively working, they're in their free time. They're on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, no breaks.
Yeah, and it's and part of that is, you know, she's doing this investigation. She talks to Blake, who Blake has been Teal Swan's right-hand guy for 12, 13 years, whatever it was. And she asked him, so do you get paid? And he's like, well, we get room and board. That's what they get.
Yeah, and that is wild for a lot of reasons. because in addition to the fact that she is super not qualified to do the work that she does, she has these people do that work as well.
Well,
And
indentured servitude is what the
yeah, I just no, room and board isn't payment. It can be part of a payment package, but it's not payment. It would be like saying, well, you know, she lets us eat out of the trash at night, so we don't starve. It's very weird.
Yeah, I mean, the non-negotiables is just, you know, one part of it. Like they are literally have to be waiting hand and foot on her, and she expects it. There's no, and if you don't immediately meet her need, whatever that need is at the moment, then she will lambaste you in front of everybody and not give two shits how you feel about it. And this is a tiny point that's a little off kilter, but not really, because to me it matters that if she does that and someone kind of confronts her on it and she leans into, well, it's because I'm a woman and there's
Yeah.
this and she leans into misogyny, and she's not wrong about misogyny in any way, except doesn't give you a license to treat people like a pile of shit. That's not how that
I mean, I
works.
feel like she is wrong about it. I feel like I'm allowed to say that. Maybe
You are, I am not.
because so I know, and I'm sure other like more marginalized populations know this too. There is a difference between how I'm interacting with somebody who I don't know and doesn't know me, and there's some kind of misunderstanding, and the tone or feeling of when I'm interacting with someone I don't know and doesn't know me, and I'm like, oh, this person has an issue with me being a woman. Um, that is never the conversation that's happening. It's not like she's saying we should budget $80,000 to go take this work to Spain. And someone says, oh, I don't know if that's a sound financial investment. It's like I am screaming at somebody who lives in my house and works for me. And someone else says, oh, I think that this might be a misunderstanding. It's like, oh, because I'm a woman, I'm not allowed to be angry. And it's like, no, you're just not allowed to abuse people who work for you for free and live in your home. There's a very big difference. Nobody's allowed to do that.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to kind of sidetrack that. It just ties into this because it's like in the handful of times we see in this docuseries that somebody stands up to her, they get dressed down, and that gets the misogynistic angle gets played more than once in it, and it's not a great look.
So I want to jumble our outline a little bit, Doug, because
Let's
if
do it.
we're going to get into what should be next, I feel like that's going to take the rest of the show. And so I think maybe we should talk about Blake, because that ties into kind of what we're talking about. That's what I'm thinking about, is that kind of culmination scene with her. And I don't know who's watched it, who's watching this, who's watched it. So I'll stop trying to be vague. But so Blake and Teal have a really interesting dynamic in that he's
interesting is a good word.
Yeah. I hate it so much.
No, me too.
I hate it
Me
so
too.
much. So they were married. He
No,
raised.
they didn't get married.
Oh,
They were in a relationship for a year.
Oh my gosh!
And they lived together, and they never got married, but they stayed living together after that.
So they were in a romantic relationship for a brief period of time.
Mm-hmm.
And he helped her raise her son from a previous relationship. Or is it a daughter?
It's a son, and it was after their relationship that she had the kid.
Oh my fucking
yes. This is the thing. Blake stood by her.
Blake I'm so, spoiler alert, he leaves, and I'm so fucking happy for him because this is insane. So they're together for a very short period of time. They break up. She retains full control over his life. If they were a married couple who owned a business together, their relationship would still be really fucked up. Yes. Really bad. But they are friends, and he supposedly helped running the company, but there's no indication that he gets paid. or gets a share of profit or anything. And he will, like, she lays down in his lap while he henna dyes her like 15 feet of hair. 15 is maybe an
That
exaggeration.
might be an over. Not far off, I don't
But
think.
it's long and it's thick and it's a hard job, and it's not sit in a chair and I'll dye your hair. It is a very weirdly intimate, like, I'm not saying it's inappropriate for people to do this for one another, but it's a very, this is somebody you are not in a romantic relationship with, who is giving you this very intimate, affectionate, relaxing experience. It's not, well, someone needs to do it, so I guess sit in the chair and I'll do it. Am I like representing this right, Doug?
Yes, you are, because I thought, like, you look at it from the perspective of, all right, so if they're friends, that's, hey, who cares? Whatever. And what consenting adults do, it's great. But it seemed very intimate. And she asked him, how long have you been doing this? He goes, since a couple weeks after we met. Like, it's just, and they've been together for 13 years, like, as business partners.
And
Well,
also,
not partners, but he's been helping her with the business for 13 years, is a better way to put it.
I also think it's weird. So my husband helps me dye my hair. My hair is significantly easier to manage than hers, but still. He wasn't helping me dye my hair when we had only known each other for a month. Like, it just feels like that is, I'm going to read into it. This is not represented in anything that I know about Teal Swan. It's not represented in the documentary per se. But to me, it feels like she had a high control relationship with him from the beginning.
Absolutely.
My husband helps me with my hair because I would prefer to do it at home and it's cheaper. And he would rather me take 10 minutes to do it than the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
When I was a single person living on my own and I was responsible for my hair, it would have never in a million years occurred to me. She'd be like, hey, can you come over and help me dye my hair? Like, that's a fun date night.
Yeah.
No, we're going to the movies.
Like, let's go do something. Like, yeah, it is an oddly, I agree. The like a weirdly intimate thing is a good way to describe that. But that's just,
when my husband does my hair, it is not nearly that sweet or loving or relaxing. He just throws the dye on the back where I can't see it. We're standing up in the bathroom.
Oh, no, yeah, that's not sexy to you.
Be more like Blake from the deep end. No,
I don't think you want that either. But and that's just one of the ways she kind of controls him, and
they have a very physically affectionate relationship, which again, so okay, here's my theory.
I have mine too.
I know plenty of people who've been in a romantic relationship, broke up, and have remained super close friends, even best friends. I know married couples who have done it. I don't get it. I only have one ex-husband, and that was never going to happen. But I'm like happy for them. It feels a little bit like they ended the romantic portion of their relationship in name, but she still expected him to perform all the duties of a partner, but like she didn't have to return that. So he's just like he's like in the habit of doing things for her, and she's taking advantage of that because, I mean, she says flat out in the show that she believes he still has romantic feelings for her, and he admits that he does. And
she uses that to her advantage.
Oh yeah, it is so creepy and weird.
Yeah, and I told you I absolutely believe that when she wanted to have sex, then she didn't have anybody do it, she would call him and expect him to come and take care of it. I mean, that's just the vibe I got. I could be totally wrong about that, but that's just the vibe I got out of it.
You know what was playing in my head through like every scene of them together until the very end is that, I don't know if you're familiar with it, the Offspring song Self-Esteem.
Yes, that's a good one.
Yeah, so people at home, if you haven't heard it, listen to that song, and that is their relationship, and it is really, it's so uncomfortable. And I've known people like that, but it was like when I was in my 20s, like you kind of expect people to grow up and be like, oh, that's super unhealthy. And of course, this is a therapeutic setting. And
Yeah.
every relationship is like the most toxic, unhealthy thing you've ever seen in your life.
Yeah, it is. And poor Blake. Like, he seems like a genuinely nice guy. I think he just gotten enraptured in some way with her, but like, you said he didn't appear to get paid. He said in that PI interview that they just get room and board. So like, he wasn't getting paid, and he was doing a good amount of work for her and was basically at her beck and call the entire time. So yeah, it was fucked up. And then by some miracle, this person comes to a Teal retreat, and somehow her and Blake hit it off.
We'll go. This is going to come up 100 times. 100 times in the next hour and a half. Super unethical practices. But of course, because what they're doing has no governing body, has no standards, has no nothing. There's no rules on what's ethical or not. So it's fine. He even says that he felt he was crossing a boundary when they got closer.
Mm-hmm.
I'm willing to forgive Blake for this because it's kind of the B story of the documentary, right? Where this woman who is German, like a German national, lives in Germany, comes back to be with him, and she moves into the house. And this is where I think if you took everything else out of the documentary, like they couldn't find anybody to talk about the stuff, and we just had to take her word for it, and her word is that it's wonderful. This would have been illuminating enough for me.
Yeah.
To Blake, she's kind of like, well, are you sure she's ready for this? This lifestyle's really intense, blah, 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 which it is. So fair. And he says, yeah. And then from that moment on, when she is speaking to Blake about this woman, Juliana, oh, I really like her. Oh, she seems to be fitting in really well. Oh, do you want me to help you pick out an engagement ring? When Blake isn't around, to Juliana, she is intensely, it's not even criticizing her. It's like,
visceral hate.
Doesn't your life suck here? Don't you hate it here? Don't you want to leave? Like, that's the undercurrent of everything she's saying. And at one point, she actually says, what would it take for you to go back to Germany? And I feel like that was a rare moment of her saying what she meant and not realizing it. Because it's that passive aggression thing, right? If someone goes back and says, I heard Teal say this, she could say, oh no, I wanted to see where she was at. Like, what is the thing that we should avoid doing to keep you in the circle? But Juliana had to know the tone of voice and everything, that what she meant was, I want you gone. And this continues after they get married. And then we have one of those stare downs you were talking about, but it's so, I have no other way to describe it. It's so fucked up. She gets everybody who lives in the house, including Blake, to come sit in a circle where she berates this woman. And because she claims to be psychic, all of this, I'm projecting my insecurities onto you to say that this is what you think about me, becomes accusations. And she's like, and this is what I have to deal with in my home every day. And like, she's the victim while she's berating this woman in a group. And she goes, well, that's not what I think of you. Because again, she came as a follower of Teal Swan. That's how she got involved in all this crap. Well, that's not what I think. And Teal says, why don't you tell me what you think? And then we'll have everybody in the room tell me what they think you think about me. But she's already gone on this tirade, so everybody knows what is expected of them. And I think that is the moment, and at least in how the documentary is edited, that Blake is like, oh, fuck this. Because he's just sitting there. He looks more upset than she does. And I think actually he might have been, because to her, it's like, well, I've been getting a weird vibe off this chick, and I haven't liked it here. So kind of saw it coming. But for him, he's seeing this side of her that he's managed to hide from himself for 13 years. That the only people she would ever talk about that way are horrible people. But this is my wife. She's not a horrible person.
Yeah, that moment where she was like telling people to go around and make a proclamation on what they thought Juliana was thinking, it reminded me so fucking much of that time when that last fucking guy was in office and was at a table and was trying to get everybody to tell me something you love about me, and everybody had to pony up some dumb compliment to him Uh,
Are
that's
you
what it.
familiar at all with Synanon? That's a cult we have to do at some point in the future.
No, I'm not. So
So they started out as a drug rehab. It's a really long story. We're not going to get into it on this episode. But one of the things they did was they'd have a group setting and everyone was obligated to participate. And if you didn't participate, you'd be goaded into it. And it'd be like, say we're in the circle and I'm the leader. And I'd be like, Doug, I know you have a problem with Greg. So I pull you in the middle circle and I pull Greg in the middle of the circle and I'd be like, tell him. And if you weren't being angry enough, mean enough, violent enough, you would be goaded into that. And Greg would have to sit there and take it. Now, maybe next week I'd say, well, Doug, I know you have a problem with Susie or whatever, but that was a thing that they did, which is kind of super fucked up. And I feel like that's what I don't think Julianne is the first person she's done that to.
Oh, no, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Regular occurrence.
Mm-hmm.
And Blake saw it for what it was in this case because he knew that to his face, Teal was saying, she's wonderful. She's great. I'm so happy for you. And then this came and hit him out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I agree with you. This seemed to be more of the turning point for Blake when he saw that and just realized, I got to get the fuck out of here. So, yeah. Like I said, I feel bad for Blake, but at the same time, it's like one of those things where like, I'm glad he's out, but I don't know how to feel about the idea that like he was just stuck under her boot heel for so long. But you know what? That's kind of how this shit works. That's how cults work. They keep people like stationary.
I also think probably in many ways that Blake's experience was more like a battered spouse than a cult member. Now, and they're not mutually exclusive, and I think a lot of cult members probably have this crossover and experience, but like, it just really struck me. Well, one, he had no money, he had nowhere to go. His spiritual life was tied up with her. He had this, fatherly relationship with her child. He walks away, he does lose everything. And no money, no social network outside of the group, like she could make it look like he had everything while doing the things that abusive spouses do in cutting off your support network, cutting off your finances, making it difficult to leave, which is why I thought it was so interesting that you have this moment in the documentary. He moves out with his wife. And there's this moment where he's made a Facebook post announcing it, which is like this weird thing we have to do in the future when we quit jobs. I've had to do it. It's super uncomfortable, right?
Seems odd. Yes.
Yeah. And he's so relieved that the comments he's getting are supportive, that people are not just like, fuck you for betraying Teal. But they are also showing us her reading them. And she's getting angrier and angrier and angrier. And she says, have you noticed all the people wishing him well are men?
And it wasn't.
What? That is the weirdest. And it wasn't that some people were wishing him well and some people were telling him to go fuck himself either. It was just.
Yeah, it was largely positive. And
the other thing, though, is where she gave herself away. She said, oh, I wish you the best for you and your wife. If they knew what happened here, they'd want her dead. And it's like, oh, you want her dead. Because that's insane. Nothing happened there at all. You just really hated that she took your manservant away.
Mm-hmm.
She was the relatively healthy outsider who was like, oh, this is fucked up.
Yeah. The other thing is, and backtracking a bit before that, was when Blake was in person with Teal getting ready to leave. And Matthias was like, okay, now we're going to just, everything is separated and, blah, 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 blah. And Teal was just livid, just fucking livid.
Terrible.
And she like basically said, I think you're weak. I think you have no honor.
Oh, yeah.
You're an absolute fucking loser. Always will be. Like, this guy was fucking sticking by you through thick and thin, and then he wants to pursue some happiness for his own, and she just calls him a loser, and just like, and I'm like,
well, and I told you that scene, and then later when she's talking to Matthias and the others, she sounds like a woman whose husband left her for another woman, but that is not what happened.
No, but that's how she views it.
Yeah, she owned him in her mind, I think.
That was mine. You took that from me. That was
Mhm.
very much how I felt about it too. But that scene was painful. And then at the end, Blake tried to love you and just like kind of, because this was his life for so long. He was just trying to leave it on a good note. And he went to hug her and she just kind of put up with it. But Matthias and the other person there, her name's escaping me, they both gave him a nice, genuine hug. And then he's like, I'll be downstairs for a bit. And then they left. So, yeah, it was a rough scene to watch because she was just freaking brutal to him. It was not great.
Imagine how she might speak to somebody she doesn't have a 13-year history with, who hasn't helped her and hasn't waited on her hand and foot. Like, just imagine. That's what was chilling to me about it.
Yeah,
And the cameras were, this is the other, the cameras were there and they knew it. This was not a hidden camera. This was not
no.
it. They were like, come on in and shoot this documentary. It's gonna make us look great. And that behavior she thinks is fine. She thinks it's no one's gonna look at that and be freaked out.
That's why I think a lot of it is that the narcissism is so heavy in her that sometimes she's just like really unaware. Like you made the point when we were talking about how it's so obvious if you're outside of it, just fucking how bad it is. But like the people inside can't see it. And it's just kind of really interesting.
Well, and I guess that would bring us to our next point, which is we talked about the kind of people who show up, right? And the people in the inner circle all came from going through this treatment.
Yep.
Almost no one joins a cult if they're not extremely vulnerable. I feel like that's fair.
Juliana didn't seem so, which that's an exception, I think. But yeah.
Yeah, and they were there for like, was it less than 2 months?
I don't know how long
They were
Juliana
only
ran.
there. She was only there for a month before he decided to marry her.
Mm-hmm. I don't know how long after that they stayed there, but yeah.
It didn't seem like it was very long, but maybe it was. It's hard to tell. But the point being is like these people are really, they're coming there like, I am broken, I am hurting, I will do anything to make it stop, and nothing has worked so far. And she creates this, well, online it's a parasocial relationship, right? Like people know her, but she doesn't know them. And then in these retreats, it's very personal.
Mm-hmm.
And this therapy is super weird, right? So someone, in my opinion, pretends to channel whoever it is that's traumatized. I actually, one of the notes I made, when Juliana is asked to channel somebody, she throws her hair in front of her face. And I'm like, I wonder if they are trained to do that. Like put their hair in front of their face or look away because it feeds the fantasy. I don't know. Anyway, you channel somebody and then this other person is allowed to just wig out. They yell, they scream, and again, if somebody got that emotional and dysregulated in a therapist's office, the therapist would say, okay, let's stop. Take some deep breaths, drink some water. We need to talk about that. But in this case, it is like, if you're not screaming and crying and kicking and fuck you, mom, then you're not doing it, right? And then the person who channeled mom, dad, brother, whoever, tells you what they got from the experience because they're all psychic apparently once they get the job. And it's this insane number of people. Like, is every single person who walks through the door of that retreat a victim of the most horrific sexual abuse you can possibly imagine? Or does that seem unlikely? And does it seem more unlikely when you know that several of those people, and they even show this happen on the documentary, they're not mad at mom for molesting them. They're mad at mom for whatever hundreds of reasons you can be mad at your mom. And well, when I was channeling your mother, I could feel that she inappropriately touched you. And this person is shocked by this information but believes it because they're in this vulnerable state where they've created this false trust. It's very we talked about this, very reminiscent of the Satanic Panic, but instead of children, it's adults, and it is so weird to watch.
Yeah. And this is something like one of the people that who was getting interviewed by this PI was a guy named Jared who had been on the Inner Circle. And to this point you made about like bringing up like sexual abuse, he said that he accused his father of sexually abusing him, and then that was completely false because that's what Teal told him. And like this is the thing you talked about with the whole, what is it? It's recovered memories, recovered.
Yeah.
I was going to say repressed, and that was the wrong word.
Yeah. So I have a big chip on my shoulder about this shit. Okay. Did we ever talk about that documentary, The Keepers? About
No.
the nun was murdered? Okay. Anyway, a big thing that happens in there is a debate about recovered memories, because that's what they're calling this woman's testimony. And in this, you're watching it, it's people talk about, well, I uncovered this in my work with Teal. They use those terms, uncovered, as in I didn't know about it before, but now I know, right? Recovered memories are, you go and you have a situation like this treatment and someone tells you what happened to you. Or you go and you have some sort of hypnosis and someone asks you leading questions until you get the right answer.
Mm-hmm.
And you may really believe it because the human brain is really weird and memories are really weird.
Yeah.
But a real symptom of trauma is forgetting the incident or forgetting the details of the incident. Having like big old Swiss cheese holes in your memory where your brain just said, nope.
Mm-hmm.
And when that happens, the stuff around the hole, it's not like a punch, like a hole punch. It's like the stuff around the hole is fuzzy.
Mm-hmm.
And so you might have somebody who for 20 years has never thought about this horrifically traumatic thing that happened to them, but they get triggered and they remember it. That's not a recovered memory. But because people don't understand the difference, a lot of those people are accused of lying. A lot of those people are accused of being crazy, or it didn't really happen, or you're attention seeking, or whatever. And it really harms people who have actual real childhood trauma that they managed to pack away until it started affecting their lives. And so it really makes me mad when people do this. And some of the stories that were shared were literally unbelievable. I don't mean it's unbelievable. I don't want to imagine that that could happen. I mean, what? And when they're asked to expand on it, it's like, well, I haven't uncovered that yet. And it's like, what?
Yeah, it's like there's a one lady who is actually in the Inner Circle, and this is the one we referred to earlier, and I can't remember her name, but
yeah,
you were like, she apparently had a recovered memory where her father raped her at 4 years old as punishment, and her mom walked in on them. Now, listen, that's not to say that shit doesn't happen, but the more unbelievable one was the one where she said the hardest one was that they had some sort of barbecue pit thing where they started a fire and they made all the kids stand on top of it. And I'm like, that seems that seems like beyond things that we can envision. Like I said, it's hard because if it's something where it's real, you don't want to minimize the people that really had shit happen to them. But that seemed like,
and this is my uneducated, like I haven't done the research and I'm certainly not an expert. Both of those incidents, she said it was done as a form of punishment. That just doesn't ring true to me. People who abuse children in that way. I'm trying to choose my words really carefully because it is very triggering and it's very
it's a tricky subject. So
people who abuse children in that way don't sexual assault is used as like that. But in most instances of child sexual abuse that you hear about, it is not when I got in trouble, my dad raped me. It's a very different kind of relationship.
Mhm.
And I can believe, because I know it happens, that parents know that the other parent is doing it and just don't do anything about it. We know this happens. That I didn't find unbelievable. Well, it was a form of punishment. And it was like, that's weird.
Yeah.
And then it was, they put every adult in her extended family was at a party, and every child in the extended family was put on a lit barbecue as a form of punishment. And when she was asked to expand on that, it was, there's a lot of stuff I've uncovered in my work with Teal, but I haven't uncovered that yet. And it just, outside of a cult, I cannot imagine, 20 adults agreeing to put 10 kids on a lit barbecue.
Me either. And we also find out that, she doesn't have any contact with her family. And, that's part of the isolation bit, right? And it all ties together. And you're right. Just the idea of remembered memories is recovered memories. It's such a dangerous people. And even people experienced with doing things of that ilk are extraordinarily careful. And
Yeah.
this was not careful. This was just, let's do it and throw you in the deep end, as the name of the show is.
Oh, by the way, we did not cover this. Where the title comes from, because that was terrifying to watch.
Oh, yes.
One of the therapies she does is she basically drowns people.
Yeah. She called it water breathing. And I would say that's more like waterboarding without the boards.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, it's like waterboarding is you feel like you're drowning even though you're not. And
Yeah.
this is, I'm going to drown you just up to the point where you're going to get brain damage, and then it'll be okay because I'm not going to risk that liability.
Mm-hmm.
It was horrible to watch.
Mm-hmm.
When you see the previews or the clips, it looks like people are having an emotional experience in water.
Mm-hmm.
When you watch it actually happen, they are freaking the fuck out because they are drowning.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel like I need to comment on whether or not that is something that would happen in a therapist's office.
And it feels like, remember, this was the one they showed it with us, like the one they actually showed the pseudo drowning was this woman who basically told Teal, I don't believe you. I came here before and my life got fucking worse.
Yeah.
And she said, but I don't know if I want to be here. I don't know. I mean, here as on this planet, she was just really fucking upset and didn't know what to do. And she goes to this woman who
hates her for saying
it. And also, she says, she goes, she doesn't come down. Nobody quite knows. And what's her room? So they go up to her room and she wouldn't answer the door. And they open the door and she's just sobbing in the room. And says,
keening.
Yeah, and she said, if I have to go home, I'm ending things. And Teal's response wasn't like, holy shit, we need to help her. Her response was, oh, great. If that happens, then they're going to blame me for that. And I'm like,
it's good. Yeah. What's going to happen to my business? That was actually the part of the documentary that made me the angriest. Because there's so many things to be angry about. But if you give the benefit of the doubt and you believe that Teal Swan really thinks that all of these goofy ass therapies help people, then she's the villain who thinks she's the hero.
Mm-hmm.
But in that moment, it is clear she does not give a fuck about the people that she treats. She gives a fuck about the money and the fame and the clout that they bring her, and that is it.
Yeah, and I feel like she was doing that to her as a form of punishment. Like, you called me out in front of everybody and tried to make me look bad. Well, you're going to do the hardest thing I can have here. And
yeah. And again, on camera with the documentary crew right there, and they let them get all kinds of shots. They went in the water. This was, these filmmakers had the kind of access that I've never seen before. Mm-hmm. I think I told you when I watched the first episode the first time, probably middle of last year, when she's preparing to go on stage and all of that is happening, like in the first couple scenes, I thought, oh, I thought this was a documentary, but it's a dramatization. And then it goes on a little longer, and I'm like, oh, it is a documentary. And it's because I mean, the filmmakers must have buttered her up a little bit.
I'm sure.
Because like the scene of her running is definitely the filmmaker saying, okay, we're going to be in front of you and you're going to run and da 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 da. And then like, now I need you to run faster. And now, like you can tell that they're set up, some of these shots. So again, it's just, what was she thinking? What was she thinking?
I mean, the amount of decisions they made collectively that they thought would work really well for them, like this makes her look terrible, like fucking terrible.
But
and she's like, let's do this, and then just film all the stuff. Yeah, we don't, whatever. My God,
she lies to the public. She lies to the PI, but she's doing it in front of a documentary crew who is taping the proof that what she's saying is a lie.
Again, I have to keep going back to the narcissism. Like, just how deep does that run that you would look at that and see, hey, people are going to get this. Like, it's a little mind blowing that I mean, it's a very well shot documentary.
It's really fun to look at, which is a weird thing to say, but it is.
Yeah. But yeah, it's the PI, it's releasing the non-negotiables, just all these different things they do that make no sense. But yet they just are like, well, what? This is what we do. That I'm still a little floored just how much they revealed and were like okay with revealing.
And I think maybe I can understand people having an adversarial relationship with psychology and psychiatry.
Sure.
Because nobody shows up there. I mean, maybe a little bit now, but for the most part, you don't show up in therapy if everything's going great. And if you have a bad experience, it can really, really fuck you up. And there is the fact that, look at the DSM and you can have 7 different diagnoses with the set of symptoms that you have, and your therapist or your psychiatrist is doing their best, or medications interact. If I take certain mental health medications, it's going to make me a zombie. And if I take other ones, it's going to work great. And for someone else, it's the exact opposite or whatever. Mm-hmm. And there's issues. There's just issues in the field like there is in any field. Mm-hmm. So I get that. But what I think she makes so clear is that even if you have issues with it, the answer is to really do your research before you pick a therapist who's licensed, and not go to somebody who says psychology is bullshit. I'm a psychic, I can help. Because everything she does would absolutely ruin her if she had any kind of license in literally anything. Mm-hmm. It's all unethical. It's all very damaging. It's all super horrific stuff to do to a person. And in a therapeutic environment, your therapist is not supposed to ever say, Doug, you should cut your mom out. Mm-hmm. Even if they're sitting there like, oh my God, like this guy is never going to get better unless he cuts his mom out. They're not going to say that. They're just not. I know people who have experienced some of the worst abuses you can imagine. Their therapist will not tell them, cut that person out. They will help them figure out what they need to do. Your therapist is not allowed to tell you these things. Mm-hmm. They're not allowed to. They're not allowed to tell you to cut people out. They're not allowed to put you through an emotional experience that, like any of the ones that we saw in the so-called treatments, those were just chilling. Mm-hmm. That would be a moment where a therapist would be like, oh no, I fucked up. I hope that I can save this situation enough that I don't get reported to the state board. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, and then just even, not paying people. pretending to be psychic. It's so dangerous and it's so upsetting because I actually know people who do this. I don't know. They're part of this industry in so much as like I am some kind of counselor or I'm providing some kind of therapy, but I'm just like somebody who owns a lot of crystals. Don't get me wrong, I'm somebody who owns a lot of crystals, but
yeah, but you're not there telling people you can heal them just because you have a lot of crystals.
Yeah, I'm not drowning people. I'm telling them that their dad raped them, so they need to cut their dad off. I'm not doing that.
Yeah. It's again, we talked about the idea that you don't want to dismiss somebody who actually has real trauma and in those veins, but like it's just seeing it and seeing how it's gotten to in very unethical ways and things that's not the way it's done and scientifically proven methods is really, really problematic and really hard to envision that that's actually how they got there. I don't know. There's times when I just like I don't get the appeal of her, but that's kind of, and it's not a matter of what's a cult. It's a matter of who's. Do they all have an insult kink that like Jesus Christ, that woman just berates everybody, and it's.
My favorite thing about her, and this is a complete guess, I don't know that it's true. Well, let me set a foundation for me to say. So, she's like super crunchy granola, whatever, right?
Mhm.
Like when you see her on her little compound, she's always in these dresses with like mandala
Mandali.
prints,
Yeah.
and she dyes her hair with henna, not with like L'Oreal or whatever. Um, there's not a single scene in the entire documentary where she is not wearing full makeup, including when she's running,
Mm-hmm.
including when she's in the pool with people. I feel like it's probably not mineral makeup, which is like the crunchy preference because I've used that stuff and it doesn't lend itself to the way that she dresses and presents herself when she's speaking to crowds. When they're showing that, and we're getting close-ups of her face, so it's not like, oh, if you're sitting in the crowd, you wouldn't be able to tell that it's mineral powder. We're getting the close-up, we're seeing, and she's super glam at these things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that she probably tells people that she uses mineral makeup, but doesn't.
Probably. I mean, when she's doing her little speaking engagement, she is decked out like heels, really nice dresses, and hair's always perfect. The hair, always perfect,
Yeah.
always. And that is not an accident. That's her persona. And the makeup is her persona too. And I think that's why it's always there.
And it's
Like,
always perfectly done, which is just not a thing you can do if you're like doing the things that she claims to be. If you're working like nonstop 24/7 on call all the time, your makeup is not going to be perfect all the time. It's not going to happen.
everybody else is working 24/7. She is not.
Right. No, I know.
That is part of how that works. I can have my minions do all the shit work, and I just sit there and look pretty and tell people that I tell it like it is, and basically debase them. And then but I'm giving you the truth. If are you unwilling to hear it, like that's how she phrases all that shit. It's like, hey, I'm just giving you the truth. If you don't like it, then you're not ready.
But the truth could be her telling you what you feel. And that was really upsetting too, is you would see people be like, oh, well, I guess that is how I feel. And it's like, no, you know how you feel. She's not like no psychic in the world is good enough to know what you're feeling better than you do.
Yeah. Oh, this just popped in my head. Can we just talk real quick about Amir?
Yes.
Because holy shit, what a weird side tangent that was.
I also feel like that was 100% her fault.
Yeah.
So why don't you start, and then I'll
Okay.
get to the part where I'm being a bad feminist. Sorry.
Okay, so there's this guy Amir who's coming, and this is his second retreat, and he says, "Well, I'm spiritual. I'm still trying to find my path." And he's talking to this other person who's there, and just saying, "Well, I came the first time because I thought it was a cult, and I wanted to see what the hell it was, and blah blah blah. And now I'm back, and blah blah." And he's trying to quote unquote figure out his path. The
Yeah, he's
path
obviously a
always,
seeker. Like he's done a lot of things, whatever
yeah.
they may be. Yeah.
So he he's like, I'm trying to find my path, and the path is like the big mystery thing, which is kind of the wellness thing. It's just you got to find your path, your purpose, whatever, some sort of derivative of that shit. And he's sitting there, and he gets a one-on-one with Teal, and she's like, "So why are you here?" And he'd say, "Well, I'm trying to find my," and it's kind of a wishy-washy answer. Like he's very wishy-washy.
I think like
And
as a person though, because there's even times, yeah. I mean, I think that's genuinely who he is. I think he's a
I,
wishy-washy guy.
I think like an ADHD guy, like just straight coherent thoughts don't come easily to him. So he's just kind of pushing. And she goes, "You're very confusing, and you're not telling me why you're here." And then he blurts out, "I think because I'm sexually attracted to you."
Here's the okay, because and she's so mad. Oh my god, is she mad? She's like ready to burn the house down after that.
Yeah, she was big mad. Yes.
And I feel like, and some of the things she says, I'm sure are 100% true. Being a woman in wellness or just on YouTube at all, that's just going to happen all the time, and it's horrible, right? Um, but she was doing that thing that she does, which is I'm just going to keep I have no reason in the world to confront you, but I'm just going to keep confronting you.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like at a certain point, people start looking for something to say. And I feel like you could be, or I could be, or anybody, the general you, could be in that situation because she is creating false intimacy. And she's not, I mean, she's not ugly. She is
No,
a pretty person, like physically pretty, not on the inside, but that's.
not otherwise. No, but that way, yeah.
You could be like confused, right? Where you're like, do I have a crush on this person or am I just like in this thing? Right. And if someone's just like, now that person sitting in front of you being like, I don't think you really want to be here. I don't think you really want to be here. Why are you here? Why are you here? Why are you here? I'm like, oh, maybe it's because I have a crush on you. It's like, because it's like a coerced confession, right?
Yeah.
You just keep going at somebody until they give you something. And she got something. She didn't like it very much.
No, and then
It
of
hadn't
course,
been inappropriate that we saw.
yeah. And the thing is he's like, and he goes, and I know that's not the thing, and that's okay. Like he was trying to back off of it. I think when it tumbled out of his mouth, he was like, "Oh shit," and knew that wasn't going to go well.
Right.
But regardless, you go back in, and she gets Blake on the phone, and is like, "You go talk to him," because he was just like, "I'm only here because I want to fuck you," and I'm like, "That's not what he said. He said
At
I
all.
am sexually attracted to you. That doesn't mean that he's saying I want to fuck you."
He
Now,
said, maybe it's because I'm sexually attracted to you. Because
mm,
she's like, give me an answer as to why you're here. And he already had. And then, despite all of that, she does some crazy thing where she supposedly channels his mother. And it is the most generic, cold read, like strip mall psychic shit I've ever seen in my life. It was
and he
unbelievable.
and she intentionally picked Juliana to be the channel, not Teal herself.
Right.
She picked Juliana, Blake's partner,
Who then
and
like covers the hair.
and did that to put her right on the fucking spot. That's what she did that for. And just you can't convince me otherwise that she was doing that to try to make Juliana look like shit. So
But it worked somehow.
it
But I
worked.
think
And Juliana later on going, "I didn't know I was so good at that." You weren't.
but Teal tells her she is good at it.
Yeah.
And then later it's like, I don't think you fit in here. But here's the thing is I think that her saying, I didn't know I was so good at it. She's someone who's been to one of these. She's obviously seen other people doing it. And then Teal says, you are good at it. I think that's probably the quality of interaction you're getting. Because the thing when we saw the other workers, whatever they're called, channeling, it was like they just sat there and were silent while they got screamed at, and then they'd be like, well, what I got the sense of was blah blah blah.
You know what, that whole scene reminded me of the Unarius ones with the bad videos where like everybody's kind of acting their own parts and nobody had any script.
It's like two guys are speaking in a super racist accent, two guys are speaking like the Queen's English, there's a guy over here who thinks he's in New England
Whatever.
in 2015. Yeah.
It was weird. It was weird because it did feel like they didn't really, here, you go in here and are you going to accept what I'm doing? Yeah, I guess. Like it is interesting because Juliana sold it better than those people for sure. But Juliana also wasn't accusing their parents of sexual assault. So there's a big difference there.
It was like, I mean, okay. So any person off the street walks into my trauma center and they're saying that they've tried everything and they've been seeking a spiritual path for their entire adult life and they're so miserable and so much is wrong. I do not have to be a psychic to be like, I bet your relationship with your parents was fucked up.
Yeah.
You know?
But Amir said he's
like that.
Yeah, but Amir said he said his life was good and he liked his life. Like, you know, maybe that was bullshit, but like that's what he wasn't saying he was miserable. He just saying he was looking for a path.
He did talk about a lot about having this struggle.
Yeah.
He's always struggling. And I think actually what was sad to me about Amir is that if he found a real therapist, he could probably find balance between feeling like he has a good life, but still struggling with his mental health.
Yeah.
But he's doing all of this wellness guru retreat, whatever. And there's so much toxic positivity in those realms. There's so much don't kill my vibe in those realms that it's like, I can't, like, I have a really good life personally. I really love my life. I love where I live. I have a beautiful house. I have a beautiful family. But there are days that I really struggle because I have mental health issues. That's normal. And I talk to a licensed therapist about it. I don't go to somebody who's going to say, you know, like, I really hate it when you come in here and you bring in your negativity. Because it doesn't help. And then it just makes you feel like the fact that you have a struggle means you're a bad person because you can't be grateful for this life you have that, you know, is good or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not great. That's the thing with the wellness community, though. There isn't very much a lot of the don't kill my vibe and toxic positivity and all that jazz. And listen, being positive can be helpful, but if you're struggling at that moment, the positivity isn't what you need. An ear, you need someone who can help you. Those are two different things than needing just positivity.
And this is something I feel like that comes up obliquely in this documentary. Toxic positivity says you can get through anything. Whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger, all that, right? What she is doing to these people makes their situation worse. It is traumatic. It is ugly. It is gross. And possibly it is feeding them lies about their own past. I think probably. That's my opinion, but whatever. And she wants them to walk away feeling grateful for it. In real mental health care, the tide is changing. It has been for a while, where it's like, no, you need to understand that some things are unbearable. And that's why you reach out to a licensed mental health worker or your social support network or whatever nonprofit support group you can find or whatever it is, because we are not meant to just go through a lot of tragic, traumatic shit. We need help. Like sometimes the things that don't kill you make you more fucked up.
Yeah, for sure. And and you have a licensed professional to help you determine what that is. Like sometimes it is just, well, you need to think of it this way or whatever. Sometimes it's just you need people to listen. Like everybody's different. Everybody, like you mentioned about the medicine before, like taking meds, it affects everybody differently. So like therapy is going to be different for everybody too. Like she just has a blanket, you're doing this. And she says every single time, this isn't going to be easy. This isn't going to be fun. Like, no, therapy sometimes isn't fun, but to make it seem like you're going to go into war every time you're in this thing that's super unhealthy.
And there is trauma therapies that want you to put yourself in a place to relive the traumatic memory so that they can, like EMDR, and I think brain spotting is the same concept. But there's a treatment associated with it that is like you were doing it once. I mean, not once total, but like you were there for an hour. You do it. You do the treatment that's associated with it. And then you don't just keep doing it for 4 days straight. And you have like a professional there to walk you through what to do when you get home and how to take care of yourself and how to not, just curl up in a ball and stay in bed for a week or whatever. And also, like you're saying, that doesn't work for everybody. Not everybody responds to that kind of treatment. Although EMDR is like supposed to be the gold standard. I haven't done it. I don't know. But it's really interesting to just see like ethically a therapist who's with a client who's not responding to the treatment that they know how to do is supposed to say, I don't think it is helping you to continue with me. Let me help you find a therapist that can do what you need. Teal's response is, I'm going to yell at you.
And if you don't get it, it's your problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not healthy.
I feel like it was like a weird advertisement for psychology, even though she keeps saying she wants to overthrow psychology. It's like, oh my God, well, at least they do studies. At least there's someone you could complain to if your therapist tries to drown you. Like, Jesus.
Yeah, she also said she wanted to have more influence in the world than the Pope, and that's a pretty fucking large fucking statement because the Pope is
very cult leader.
While I don't think that's who you should aspire to. That is a man who exudes a lot of power. So
okay, wait. So why don't you update us on that article you read, because I want to know how long you think it's going to be before she says she's Jesus. But I think you should update us before we get into that that line of conversation about where she's at as a cult leader right now.
Well, I'm trying to remember because there was a lot of nuggets in that particular article, and I can't remember them all because I just found it today and I read through it. And I was kind of like dumbfounded. One thing is they apparently have a facility in Costa Rica now instead of Park City, Utah, which can't imagine why they want to go there. I'm going to guess not being prosecuted is a good reason not to go there.
When your own guy is like, I know when I give you this report, you're just going to shove it in a drawer and never let anybody see it.
Yeah. And it was said in the article that she built this facility with her husband, Ace, ACE. Is this the sixth husband? Because we never know for sure that, the Arcturian alien. I don't know what the fucking Arcturian alien.
That mean we missed something.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look
at the documentary, and now I gotta look at it.
Yeah, I'm gonna look that up too because Arcturian. I don't think I've ever even.
Okay, you update us, and I'm gonna Google that phrase.
Okay, so with that, she also this is where in this article she said that she was abducted and held captive on weekends by this person who was said he could cure her or fix her because she said her parents thought she was mentally wrong. But this one says this person sewed her up in a dead body and it's contradictory and
so weird.
Yeah.
So it didn't help, Doug, because
Arcturian starseed.
Oh, the starseed thing, is that what it? Okay.
Well, I just looked up Arcturian, and that's
So Arcturian alien is something from a fandom. It appears to be involved in Alien versus Predator somehow, but it's also,
okay.
in addition to that, a UFO conspiracy. So it's both things. But the starseed thing I do know about, and it's like the most self-involved, self-congratulatory BS. It's like, have you ever wondered why you feel different? It's because actually you're a starseed and you're very, very special.
So very special.
And nothing you do could possibly be wrong because you're a starseed.
Yeah, so like I said, I can't even remember all the shit going in that. It just was like now she's doing these retreats in Costa Rica, and then she built it with a husband named Ace, who we've never heard of.
I forgot to mention, you said Ace, and I'm like, I bet that's not his real name.
Nope.
And that reminded me of the guy, I can't remember what his
Matthew
was.
Matthew was his original name.
Yeah, and we decided that it didn't fit anymore, so Teal and I picked a name together, and the name was another color name. It was Cyan.
Cyan, yeah.
And it's like, oh, honey.
Oh, honey. Yeah, that was
It wasn't like turquoise.
Which is funny. So I used to work in a newspaper industry, and the cyan was a big pain in the ass color for us to use for printing. So yeah, that's all. I just think of pain in the ass when I think of that. So sorry.
Yeah, also, yeah, because I was thinking of my printer cartridges as well. But I thought it was funny because isn't it blue?
Yeah, it's a version of blue. So yeah.
Yeah, like teal.
Maybe. Oh.
Yeah, that's what
that would have been great if she would have made everybody change their name to some variation of blue, like cerulean.
Yeah, that's what I was cerulean.
And navy.
Midnight blue.
Seafoam.
Or now mint, because for some reason in recent years mint has stopped being mainly green and has started being mainly blue.
Okay, that I did not know. Oh, and somebody would have to be named Azure, because that would have to be part of it.
Or Azul, because Azul.
That was Azure.
And well, you could have both, because they're both blues.
And we have Eiffel. Somebody could be named Eiffel 65 because they did the song Blue. Ba-ba-dee, ba-ba-da. All right, I'm getting ridiculous. Sorry.
I didn't know Teal was her middle name. I figured Swan was not her last name.
Well, names are just arbitrary to her. She just doesn't care. Oh, well, we'll just call you Cyan. Like, okay, great.
I wouldn't even name my cat Cyan.
But that would be cool. That's a cat. That's not a human being. Like,
no, I know, but I'm like, a lot of names that people give their kids that I'm like, oh, why'd you do that? Why wouldn't you name your cat that instead? Which I literally did, by the way. My husband hated one of my favorite names, and now I have a cat named that. But okay. Yeah, I don't know. It's like I'm not going to name, like, I love Patrick Swayze, but if I got pregnant tomorrow, I wouldn't name my kid Swayze. But I might have a dog named Swayze. I don't think I'd have a dog or a cat named Cyan.
So you would name a dog Swayze, but not a cat?
It depends. Does the cat do Tai Chi? I don't know.
That would be fucking cool.
It'd be great. Roadhouse.
Look at my cat.
Really needed.
The cat doing Tai Chi in the background. I'd be like, what the hell's going on with your cat? Oh, he's just a practitioner.
We would totally have to change the format of the show, because I would just then be like, come join my cult, which is my cat is a Tai Chi master who's we're going to get in touch with our chi, our life energy. And
yeah. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out what Teal Swan's original full name was, and I can't find it, but it was.
You know what I thought? Okay, this is really weird, but it stood out to me. did you notice? I wanted more about her childhood because she had a bowl cut as a little kid, and I'm like, is that mom cut everybody's hair and mom's not a hairdresser, so everybody got a bowl cut? Is that a weird wish we had a boy situation? Is that she asked for it? It's just, especially given that she can't be that much older or younger than me. So we're talking about a time where people make comments to kids, to little girls with super short hair. I mean, I was 14 when I started cutting my hair short, and people made all kinds of comments to me. So, like, I want to know what was going on there. But not from her, though.
Not from her, because she'd made conflicting reports. So, like anything's game, she could have made anything up. Maybe she's recovering memories on the fly. Who knows?
Well, but here's the thing I think is important to say, because we brought up the fact that we don't trust her. But an important thing to say is I don't trust her account of what happened to her. But I absolutely believe without a doubt that something horrible happened to her, because she behaves in a way. It's just, she is so clearly somebody who has a lot of shit to deal with, who hasn't dealt with it, which is the sad irony, because she believes she has totally dealt with it and she can help everybody else do it too. She talks about how her inner circle is going to protect her. She projects all sorts of self-hate onto other people, like, you hate me, not the other way around. And like, also, I think the fact that she thinks absolutely everyone she encounters is a victim of child sex abuse is something that I have seen fairly often from people who were sexually abused as children and haven't really worked through it. Because to them, it's like, well, everybody says it's not that common, but it happened to me. So now every time I see, any adult in the world with a child in a bathing suit or holding hands or whatever, I immediately think something's wrong. Yeah. That's not what she's doing exactly, but she's doing like a nefarious version of that almost.
Yeah. I mean, also the idea that this hyper control she has, that seems very much symptomatic of someone who didn't have any control and is just trying to exude that because that's how they can cope. Again, I am no person who is a psychologist or a psychiatrist, so that just could be me blowing smoke because I don't know.
Right.
But it seems
blanket disclaimer that we are.
Yeah, we are not licensed to practice either. But we're also not trying to drown people.
Not be able to diagnose her, because that would be unethical. Yeah. No, and I think also her very measured tone about absolutely everything is something to me that strikes as off in like, well, I'll get personal. I've had exactly enough vodka to get personal. When I first started getting treatment for my PTSD, my therapist said something that I'd never really thought about before, which is, you can't turn off one emotion. So like, you don't want to feel angry or you don't want to feel sad. So you turn that off or you try to tuck it away. Eventually, they all go away. And then every time you let any emotion out, they all come out at once. So I think from watching her, it's almost like because she never has any emotion, except for when she's angry. But even then, she's like very measured. It's very strange to watch, right? She's being so cruel, but she's not flying off the handle. And like when Blake leaves, she's like, I haven't even cried about it. I can't cry about it. She's talking about it like, I went to check the mail and then there was a bill. So and I feel like maybe there's some of that going on where it's like, maybe in part because she's so public, but maybe it is because something really fucked up happened to her. And it's just like, well, we'll just have no emotions because that's better than having the bad ones.
Yeah. And then, I mean, in that moment where she was just, talking about how, and we talked about it earlier, where she was just getting furious at all these positive comments for Blake. And just, she's saying she didn't have time to cry about it. And you're you're right. It felt very not devoid of emotion.
Yeah.
But she also the only emotion that really comes out is and there's times when the anger is unbridled, like with Blake, that was unbridled.
That was
That was unbridled. And but then she basically says, everything you told me was a lie. All your trust was bullshit. Like, no, like just basically
later, not in the heat of the moment, she tells someone else he broke every promise he made.
because he wanted to find some happiness without you. Yeah.
Because he wanted to quit his job. Like he just wanted to quit his job.
Yeah. But that's how she sees everything. It is, again, it's a very loyalty. You are loyal to me, period. Kind of focus. So,
And I guess I would hesitate to say that people who are obsessed with blind loyalty are all like, oh, this person just needs therapy to get over whatever horrible thing happened to them as children. Because that is not always the case.
no.
But I think that when someone has been betrayed by parents and authority, like the people who are supposed to keep them safe, that can become very important. And then there's other things she says about Blake, which makes it sound like that's kind of it, right? Where she's like, he's the person who taught me how to trust. And now he broke my trust. And now what do I do? And it's like, well, he didn't, though. He didn't lie to you.
No, he was very genuine about what he wanted. So,
She lied to him. I mean, that's the thing that's so crazy, right? She lied to him. I think she knew that if she said, what are you thinking? Of course you can't have a girlfriend. Of course you can't get married. That would lay her cards all out on the table. And Blake would see her for what she was, but so would anybody else that found out about it, right? So what she did was made it seem like it was all cool and then played both sides in a really weird way until she couldn't take it anymore. Because I think as planned and orchestrated as that meeting was where she went off on Juliana, I think that was actually her being desperate.
yeah.
It's like, I don't know what to do to make it stop, so I'm just going to throw a nuke bomb at it and hope that when the dust clears, Blake stays.
And she expected Blake to take her side. And the other part to this is after Blake leaves, she had this meeting with her inner circle and says, you guys need to do something to protect me. Not about we're all in this together. It's you need to protect me. Mm-hmm. And basically they redo the non-negotiables. And she said, I want you all to have partners, and all these stipulations get thrown at all these stuff. And then what about children? I can't have kids waking me up at 3 a.m. if I have interviews the next day. So basically no kids. So you are not allowed to have kids because that disturbs her sleep. Again, it's all good.
If they didn't all live with her, one, she wouldn't have the amount of control she has mentally, emotionally, or physically. Mm-hmm. But two, she would have to pay them. Mm-hmm. Right? Yep. Normal people can work for somebody who doesn't want to be around children, who has to get up at 5 a.m. to interviews, whatever. They can have children because their children are in their home and they go to work in the morning and they go home in the evening. Mm-hmm. It's just, yeah. But also she said, I want you all to have partners, but I also don't want any of you to have partners. And I think that's important because like the thing was, you come up with ideas of how you'll protect me from my partners, but I've already planted the seed that maybe it'd just be easier if you didn't. Yeah. And then she says, she doesn't say, I need to have the ability to kick your partner out of the house if they're dangerous to me or they're fucking up the vibe or whatever. She says, I need to be able to get rid of you. And it's like, so these people are only allowed to have partners that are not only perfectly compatible with them, so they never have an argument or a disagreement or anything that might upset the vibe of the house, but also perfect for Teal Swan in every way. Yeah. Or they're getting kicked out. Not their partner, them. I mean, their partner would also be kicked out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's just that kind of shit. I'm like, oh, God. And then the one lady says, well, I think all the women here, none of us want to have kids. And there was one person there who, in the inner circle, there was a couple. They were both Asian American, and they were a couple. And the lady looked at her like, what are you talking about? Like for a moment,
Oh, I didn't catch that.
I caught that and I was like, it wasn't like a wide eye, it was more like kind of a side eye.
Like,
And then she stonewalled real quick so nobody would catch it, but the camera caught it.
right. That is also, I think, like, if you want to know if a group is a cult or not, if you're looking at them in a group and somebody shows an emotion and then immediately hides it, it's probably a cult.
Probably.
I mean, but also I think it's like, okay, so one of the studies, and I can't remember who did it, about groupthink, mob mentality, whatever you want to call it, is that if one person in the room says, I don't think that's right, it can turn the whole group, or it can turn enough of the group to break everything down. And what I think is interesting is like in cults, and we see it clearly here, is when that one person says, well, I don't think that's right. She makes an example of them. She makes it so terrifying to be the one person who says it, so that like that person immediately goes, oh no, that's not what I meant. Or, oh no, like misunderstanding. Oh, I'm so sorry. And then nobody's going to speak up again.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So we're coming up here with an hour 45, but the thing we haven't talked about, it's a bit of a lighter note. We have to talk about the PI and the manager, because those two things show just how kind of wackadoodle inept they are in certain ways. So
the PI was adorable. I mean,
super adorable, but
why do you Rolodex, Doug?
Why hire a PI who hates technology? Like, she just clearly was like, computers. And I'm like, you're a fucking PI. Like,
you know why they hired? I know why they hired her.
Well, yeah, but
because she says that she lays it out. I don't know that she knows she's laying it out, but she's like, I just hate it when someone who is popular and attractive is getting harassed and attacked, and it's uncalled for. That's why they hired her. But I think this is the thing that's funny. They wanted her to be inept.
Yeah.
They didn't think she was going to get on Zoom and watch the videos and talk to people. And like, I think they thought that this was some like little old lady who sits at her desk with a phone book, you know, which she kind of comes across as, but she did her.
And she had a Rolodex.
It was her prized possession.
And she was like, not too many people have a Rolodex. Plus, when I forget my passwords, they're right there. And I'm like, oh boy, like, wow.
Right next to your computer, your private investigating firm. Okay.
Yeah, but to be fair,
hire a private investigator who keeps their passwords next to the computer if you want them to like get pictures of your spouse having an affair, because then everybody's gonna have pictures of your spouse having an affair.
And to be fair, she was quite funny and engaging, and did her job pretty well. It just was like when they hired her, I just was like, the first thing she talks about it, she's like, computers, and I'm like, it's the 21st century, ma'am. What do you
I also think so. She did the legwork and she wrote an unbiased report, and she knew that her client wouldn't like it. And I think that's brave and that's bold. Also the bare minimum for the job she does, but you know what I mean. But I bet that had she been a little bit more tech savvy, she would have found a whole lot more.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, she dug up pretty well, but she also interviewed people like that had left. She interviewed people who were still in, and she didn't she asked questions that were purposeful. She didn't ask, softball questions to anybody. She just, and the big one out of that to me was that Jared guy, which we briefly talked about. And he just was like, he wasn't like an asshole about it. He was just like, I gave my whole life to that. And then when I left, and it was like, so yeah.
Did he say, I don't want to quote this because I'm worried that I am going to misquote, but I thought that he actually said that when he left, Teal told him he should kill himself.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
She did tell him that.
And that's
that's fucked up. And And not only that, when because he came out of a divorce and was just lost, and this is where he fell into the Teal thing, and he interesting left Mormonism and came to her. So like,
I forgot about that.
yeah. So but that's not the point I wanted to make. The point I wanted to make is he had kids with his ex. And he went basically and lived with Teal and told her he couldn't pay her child support because he didn't have money. And he goes, I had money. I was giving it all to Teal.
Yeah, and he doesn't say this. Well, I mean, maybe he does, but not in the documentary. I got the sense that he was being told to do that.
Yeah, he didn't explicitly say that, but I think it was almost like you are expected to do this. Kind of like Blake. I think whatever money Blake got. I mean, if you look at that place they have, that place is a fucking mansion in the middle of the hills of Utah, which listen, Utah now the property isn't cheap, but I don't know when she bought it, but like
Yeah.
and he is driving a beat up freaking Subaru. That's his car. And I guarantee you Teal Swan is not driving a fucking shitty Subaru.
She strikes me as somebody who doesn't drive.
No, I agree. She probably has somebody drive her because
And I don't mean like she can't drive. I mean, yeah, like you said, she has
yeah.
it.
I have a driver because I can't be bothered with mundane things. I'm dealing with stuff on a higher plane.
I mean,
Like that kind of
she may not have a driver anymore because it was probably Blake.
it's probably right. Like you notice when she goes to her events, like they have bodyguards walking her to a vehicle and she gets in the back and they drive her away. Now that might just be for events, but I doubt it. I think that's just how she rolls
Yeah.
because
I
she
mean,
thinks she's
just because,
famous.
like you said, she's somebody who just really comes across as like, well, I just don't have space in my brain to even think about driving a car or cooking an egg or whatever.
Yeah. Oh, no eggs. She's vegan.
Well, there you go.
So because all her retreats are vegan vegetarian menus only. So that was something that was in that article too, which kind of falls in line with the wellness crunchy granola stuff, but at the same time, like she would say that. I'm guessing she's the kind that would be like, yeah, but I'm gonna have a steak once in a while.
Well, not to anybody. We'd have
Yeah,
to
no,
ask
no.
Blake.
Yeah, it would be, hey, can you get me a steak? And now she doesn't have that. Maybe that's why she was
Iron
cranky.
is so low.
Hmm.
I wouldn't. I don't even like the way it tastes, but my iron is so low. It's really needs to.
I could feel an imbalance.
I have a psychic connection with the cow, and the cow actually said it was fine.
It was willing to lay down its life for me. So yes.
It thought about both scenarios, and it decided that being a steak was what it wanted to do.
Yes. So all right, Matthias.
Yes,
I told you this, and you're like, I didn't catch that.
I didn't catch it. I mean, he does seem very inept.
You think?
Uh, he's sort of endearing. It's almost
He's endearingly inept is a good way to describe
yeah,
it.
but it's almost like if you watch him a lot of the time, it seems like he's kind of sitting there like, myself into. Like he never says it, he never pushes back. But
Nope.
there's just like this look on his face in a lot of these scenes where he's sort of off to the side, where he's like, "Oh, here we go again."
Yeah. Well, so the thing about Matthias is we talked about hiring a boomer PI who hates computers. Well, this was worse. Teal Swan hired a tennis coach. Came up to him and said, I see you're a tennis coach. He said, yep. How would you like to manage me? So he became her PR person and management. No experience. No experience. And you get to see that play out really well for her and him.
It's sort of like when child stars, their parents are the managers because that like seems natural to the parents. Or like my manager's my brother-in-law because I need a reason to spread the money around. And it's like, oh, it's an actual job though. It's a thing that takes skills. Like I feel like I adapt to new like professional situations really easily. I would not take a job as a manager. I have no idea how to do that job. And I certainly wouldn't take a job as a PR professional. I can barely do my own, like making sure my family isn't mad at me for blowing them off. I can't do it. Like, I'm not going to be making press releases.
Yeah, I mean, just time and time again, he just makes really kind of dopey decisions. And like, but Teal hired him. She sought him out. Like, what did she see? Like, other than that, he was easily controllable.
I
But
want the whole story because there's got to be. I mean,
how did he even get on her radar?
Right. So
Like,
here's the thing: if we
what is that?
we would never be able to believe it. So what I want is an actual psychic to read Teal Swan's fake psychic brain. Tell us what the hell was going on with that.
What a call, Teal. Good job.
Let's take her to the psychic convention where Ruth and Ernest met.
Oh my God, that'd be funny. It makes me wonder sometime if he was like some sort of plant, because like holy shit, that guy just made. And like he comes in, he says all the right things. All right, Teal's at 1 million. The next step is these people, and they're 2 million. Where there's Tony Robbins, and I'm like,
either.
And I'm like, that doesn't. Yeah, it gets you views. It doesn't get you money. It gives you some money, but that's minimal money. That's not a lot of money you get out of that.
You're not doing the same kind of work either.
Yeah, you're not an SEO brand operator or whatever.
Like, I'm sure that there are people in this world who still take Tony Robbins super seriously. I don't think
they should not.
Yeah, like he's so out of vogue. It's like we got to beat this guy who isn't even really playing the game anymore. It's like, oh.
Now that guy's also a giant misogynist, but that's another.
I mean, we could do a whole episode on Tony Robbins. I'm just saying.
I do not want to do anything on Tony Robbins because I dislike that man so much.
I mean, me too. Me too. Like, yeah. We could change that. We could change the whole format of this show to be about self-help people, because
there's a lot of them that are.
Anyway, I just think it's Egypt. To me, right, for a minute, I was like, okay, and this is before I knew he was a tennis coach. Even I was like, okay, and then I thought for a second, I was like, what does that have to do with anything? That's not PR. That's not management. Those
that should be a separate group doing. That's your focus. You don't do anything else but see how to grow the brand.
That's a social media manager, first of all.
Mm-hmm.
Second of all, do you know how many? I don't even know how many pages I like on Facebook. Most of them don't come up in my algorithm. And I would, if I went and opened that up right now, I'd probably be like, what? When did I like this random page? Somebody.
How drunk was I when I liked that? Holy shit.
A friend of mine did a sci-fi podcast. I forgot. Like,
they don't even exist anymore. Like,
yeah. It's just like, okay. I mean, I have no problem believing the numbers he's saying of these other self-help people, but it's like, what is their engagement like? I might like Tony Robbins on Facebook, even though I hate his guts, because who knows? Maybe my finger slipped.
Yeah. I mean, she also had like 1 million subscribers on YouTube because her YouTube stuff was pretty popular, but like, whatever.
Shouldn't that, now again, I'm not a PR person. I know this, but I know there's ways to make money on Facebook. I don't know what they are.
YouTube is more lucrative, but yes.
I know that it exists. I know how you make money on YouTube, and I feel like if I were somebody's manager and they had 1 million followers on YouTube, I would be pushing the effort on YouTube because you get paid when you have subscribers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was a whole thing with Hank Green, who I don't know if you know who he is, and if you don't, you should. He's a science guy. He and his brother John Green, who wrote The Fault in Our Stars. Yeah, they're brothers. Okay. And they did a science YouTube channel for many years before it was like cool to be on YouTube. Like they've been around for forever. But Hank Green talked about how monetization between YouTube and TikTok and Facebook, and YouTube was far and away the most lucrative, and TikTok was like the worst, like for making money. But yeah, I'm with you. If you had that many subscribers on YouTube, that is where I would focus it, because you can grow money off of that. Whereas Facebook, you might grow some money, but it's going to be minuscule comparatively speaking.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Dumb.
And you already have a platform there. I mean, okay. Here's the diamond in that rough. If he's really bad at it, it's going to keep her from reaching as many people as she would reach and screw up if she had a better manager.
See, that's the silver lining. And I think that's a pretty good place to end, don't you?
Yeah. On a high note, Teal
Yeah.
Swan is not going to fuck up as many people as she could because she hired a tennis coach to be her PR manager.
Yeah. So don't do that.
But encourage her to keep doing that.
Yes. Teal, by all means, keep making the dumbest hiring decisions you can. Please keep doing that. So, hey, did you want to tell us who we're covering next month, which is March 1st? We're doing 2 months in a row on the 1st.
Oh, we're special and fancy. We're doing Source Family, which is not. This is wild. They are not the only cult known to have a rockin' sandwich shop.
Yeah. Oh,
they did have a rockin' sandwich shop, and they were like deeply entwined with Hollywood. A friend of mine showed me they used to put. They had enough connections in the recording industry that like if you bought a record, there would be like inserts about the Source family in it. That's why when he told me that in that day, I was like, all right, I'm watching this documentary.
Yeah.
And the big finale involves hang gliding. So it'll be a little bit more relaxed. Not as fun as Unarius.
Yeah, but interesting nonetheless.
There's no cult as fun as Unarius. So that's gonna be our next one. And then I have set a goal because I remembered at the same time Ruth Norman was running Unarius, there was a woman somewhere in Eastern Europe who was doing something very similar, but way darker. And she had like these really high fashion costumes, but they were like the goth version. So there's like a dark Uriel. I cannot remember her name. So we're going to do that one soon. As soon as I figure out who it is, I just can't remember. But next is the Source Family, and that is also available on Tubi, who, again, they should be sponsoring us because we can't shut up about Tubi. But it's free, which is the important thing.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's like a weird LA hippie dippy height of like everybody and their mother was in a cult. Really weird stuff. And it'll be fun.
Yeah, it'll be fun. And the height of like Haight Ashbury up in San Francisco, like one of the people was from that and came down to LA to join. And it was there's a lot. It's going to be a lot of fun and interesting.
Yeah. So. And great sandwiches.
Okay. That we have to talk about too, because I like sandwiches.
I just love that was apparently a trend for a while because there's at least one other cult that I know of that currently still runs sandwich shops. Don't eat there, but apparently sandwiches are amazing. So people are like, well, I know they're bad. I know it's a cult, but the sandwiches are amazing.
Would you like a side of cult with your sandwich?
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, so that'll be fun. We'll do that next month. And then we'll have like a longer in between because March is 5 weeks long. We'll miss you.
Yes, we will. But that'll give us more time to find some oddball shit to share with you. So it'll be fun.
Yeah. We'll do maybe do a deeper dive on the Source Family.
Yeah. Okay. All right, folks. Thanks a lot for joining us. And we will see you in 1 month's time. Take care.